Hi crafty friends, Shana from ShanoukiArt. Welcome back to my big fat pink journal series. A great way to add interest and additional journaling space in your journal is to create a waterfall notepad. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a simple version of this notepad. I'm going to create a deluxe version later on in the series. I'm also going to show you how to extend designs onto the opposite page to create cohesion. I'm going to use a simple plain coffee stand page as the background of my notepad. The notepad's going to be pretty busy with the papers that I'm going to be using, so a plainer background is more suited. Gather a lot of different papers that suit the theme of your journal. We're not going to use all of them, but it's nice to have a variety so you can mix and match. As per my normal style, I don't really measure anything. I eyeball the size and then I tear it with my ruler. This first piece that I have torn is the size that I want the width of my notebook, and I'm going to use that as a start. The concept is pretty simple. You're going to have a few sheets of paper roughly about the same size, just different lengths, that you're going to join together at the top. The back of the notepad is going to have the biggest or longest piece of paper. It's going to extend down the bottom and it's going to fold over on the top. Using that first piece of paper that I cut as my size template, I'm going to now cut the longest piece, which will be the back part of my notepad. I'm using a double-sided piece of scrapbook paper. This is because I'm going to fold over the top and I want it to be printed too. Of course, this is not necessary. You can use one-sided paper or anything that you have. You also don't have to fold over the top, but I'm going to staple my notepad together and I want that top little piece to cover the staples. Because I'm not accurately measuring, I'm going to trim as I go. I like to use busy papers and plain papers alternating to create balance. You want some plainer papers as you want to use that for journaling, and then the ones with print are just for interest and you can always write on the back. When I do vintage work, I love using these invoice type of handwritten papers. These prints are available from Making and Creating. I'll put a link in the description box below. I really think they enhance the theme of vintage. You'll notice that I first tear it to get the width and then I place it along the other ones and then I sort of tear it to the length that I want. You can pre-measure yours, you can do it like I do it, whichever way you find easier. I'm quite happy to add and rip as I go. I want to add a little bit of green. I think it's a good contrast with all the pink and vintage that we're doing. I have this graph paper, so I'm going to add a piece of that in the back, and then I have the green card stock on the right that I'm going to also add on the top. So I think that's enough papers. There's enough of each one showing so you can see the color and the design. The amount showing of each isn't even, so you can trim that down and change it, or you can leave it as is. I'm going to rough up the edges on some of the papers. I'm using an open scissors. I just scratch along the edge. This works best with the thicker cardstock. If there is a rip in the paper, I just tend to curl those little bits back. It gives it a lovely worn and used look. I'm adding some distress ink on the edges. If you happen to put a little bit too much, you can just use a wet paintbrush and just smooth it out. If you're doing more of a modern journal, you don't have to obviously rough up the edges. A final check and trim for each piece before I assemble everything together. I'm then going to use my stapler to staple the top together. I'm going to do 3 across. If you don't want to staple, you can always glue the pieces down, or you can also machine stitch. And then I'm going to use a piece of double-sided tape to attach that small little fold over to the notepad. I use my awl, but you could use something like a toothpick to help curl up the edges on some of the papers. It helps with that aged look. The notepad is now ready to add to the journal. I'm going to attach it with double-sided tape. I'm going to apply double-sided tape over the entire back. So I'm going to put quite a few pieces just to make sure it stays in place. I wouldn't recommend anything like a glue stick, as the notepad can be a little heavy with all the layers of paper and it could eventually unstick. Our notepad is now adhered to our journal page. I want to add a little bit of decoration at the top of my notepad. This, of course, is optional. I'm going to use some elements that I will use again in the journal, or ones that I've already used. This is how I create cohesion in my journals. I definitely want to use that pink flower, which is actually off a greeting card. I'm going to add 1 or 2 pieces of something just behind that for interest. I am going to use a piece of that fiber paper, which is available from Taperlogy. I'll put a link to their website in the description box below. There's also a discount if you use my links. I wanted to create some balance. There's some black text on the right hand side of the journal, and I wanted to bring that across onto the left. I had a piece of dress pattern which was white tissue paper with black writing, but I found the white on white wasn't really good. I alternatively then took a piece of that vintage brown tissue paper style dress pattern with the black text, tore a small piece and popped it just underneath the flower, and I thought that looked much better. I'm going to stick down these 3 layers now using glue stick. Well, glue stick for the fiber paper and the tissue paper. I'm going to use a wet craft glue for the flower. It is a thicker cardstock and I don't think the glue stick will hold really well. To create a bit more oneness with these 2 pages, I'm going to take a piece of the vintage dress pattern tissue paper, like I've used on the left under the flower, and I'm going to put a small piece on the right like a tab. The paper is busy enough on its own. It's got the pretty flowers and the beautiful colors that match the entire theme. So just a small piece of this tissue paper will help connect the 2 pages. And simply sticking that down with some glue stick. It doesn't need much more than that. I really hope you enjoyed this video and this episode of my Big Fat Pink Journal. I hope you were inspired to create your own waterfall notepad. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell so you're notified every time I upload new content. Thanks again for watching. Happy creating, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.